All right. Hi, everybody. Can you talk to make sure that the thing is? Oh yeah. Okay. I see lines moving. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. Good. Hopefully everybody can hear everybody. Hopefully I've got that much done. I was doing a lot of frantic screenshotting right before the podcast, trying to get deck lists into OBS. So you know, as happened. Well, the train was late again too. So because yeah, because this is the MBTA and they apparently they had this is the rush hour train, right? And they routinely have not enough conductors, which means that they can't open all the doors because they need to have enough conductors at each door. I
No.
get yeah. So
Oh, that's brutal.
so they have one door at each end of the train open and everybody has to go like the length of the commuter rail train to get off, so it's like a good 5 minutes at every stop waiting for everybody to get off. So like this train's supposed to be an express, supposed to take me like 40 minutes to get home, and it took an hour today just because it's just for waiting for people to get off the train.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's still better than driving in rush hour traffic, so I won't complain that much, but it was, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
Jeez.
Well,
This is
Shall
Transit
we-
Talk with Wicked Good. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, should we switch over to griping about Hearthstone instead?
Oh. Oh man. Yeah. This whole week was just like, do I hate everything or am I just tired and need to go to bed?
I made sure to. Well, we should get started.
Yeah.
And then
Okay,
And then
so
yeah.
all right, so I am recording.
Recording?
Recording.
All right. Oh, let me get my stuff together. Okay. 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. Starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
I grant you permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Welcome to episode 414 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, September 21st, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Oh.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. As always, if you'd like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. Always helps people to find the show. And we've got a lot to talk about this week because we actually got our hands on Anomalies, which I think we're fairly aligned in our sentiments, in a bit of opposition to the Blizzlets of the world. I had to make sure to listen to their show last night so I could get some of the alternative perspective of how people feel about Anomalies. And to my horror, a thing that was said was, well, I almost feel like both sides aren't really happy because I really want more game warping effects. And I'm like, no, get out.
I'm just shocked that they had time to discuss the game with all of the time that would have been naturally taken up by Tentacle Talk. So
there was plenty of technical talk. There was also some truly deranged subject matter, perhaps more than usual. But yeah, a good time. And always nice to get sort of differing perspectives, right? We hear the three of us are all pretty centered on like, I want to consistently do what my deck is supposed to do and win games and, you know, be in top legend. And Blizzlet is a little bit more of the embrace the chaos. Let's just do wild things. And, you know, I'm glad that they're happy with Anomalies, and many people are happy with Anomalies. But our circles are, I think, those that are less happy about Anomalies.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we'll have plenty of time to talk about it, but I've been making a concerted effort when I've been thinking about how it makes me feel to put words to it rather than just I like this or I don't like this, because I feel like, you know, this sucks or this is great is not really helpful in terms of communicating like what this is making me feel. And I keep thinking back to you know, I play a decent amount of TFT, so I follow Mort Dog, who's he's the lead designer on TFT. He's very, you know, visible. And he was talking about how like what kinds of feedback are good and what aren't. And you know, like one of the things he calls out Frodan, our Frodan, who used to be a Hearthstone commentator, now is a TFT commentator, for saying things like, hey, Mort, this isn't fun, but you're going to fix it, right? And like, you know, there's two things there. One is saying what the problem is, right? I mean, I'm sure that he elaborates more on any given specific thing if he doesn't like it. And also like trusting the team is going to resolve it. And you know, I trust that if there's a couple things going on, and I think that some people like this kind of thing more than others. And I think that we've talked a number of times on this show that not every meta is for everybody. And, you know, things go in cycles. So that's one thing. But also, like, I trust that the team wants the game to be fun. So if I don't know what the overall sentiment is, you know, I don't know what the general feedback is, but I trust that they are going to tune this regardless of whether, you know, whether Anomalies are generally being well received or poorly received. Regardless, like, there are going to be some rough edges that they can smooth out regardless. And I have faith that they will get it into a fun place one way or the other.
And also, I think they may be thinking about just the amount. We'll see how it feels when it's down to 1 every 4 games. And is that something that people want to continue for, you know, all the way until up toward the next expansion?
No.
You know, 2 months. I think they're aware that that's a decently long time. And so if the excitement fades out and people are still feeling like it's too much, I'm sure they'll consider it. Obviously, you know, it's something that they worked hard on and that they're excited about, and they want to us to be excited about also. But I also don't think that they are therefore not even going to consider, you know, they're clearly going to consider changes and also think about potentially the duration, depending on how it feels, again, once it's down to just 25% of games. So I certainly have a lot of thoughts on Anomalies. Also, I have felt like most of the, you know, and I'll get into particular stories from games. Most of the time, it hasn't affected the game that much. There's a little bit of decision making that I have to make, you know, or it'll change my turns, especially my early turns with some of them. But it doesn't, for many games, I don't think about it too much. It doesn't feel that impactful. But then for most of the games, for me personally, where it does feel impactful, even if it was in my favor, I don't feel like it was in my favor in an interesting way often, that I like took advantage of something. Because most of the time when it is impactful, it's impactful because it impacted someone disproportionately, favorably or unfavorably. And of course, it feels worse when you're the one who doesn't get a new hero power because you're playing Shadow Priest. I actually stopped playing Shadow Priest in part because both of the hero power ones are not great for it. The change,
right,
in both of them, the order is wrong for you. So on the change hero power, first Benedictus replaces your hero power, and then you have to choose a different one.
Oh.
Yeah.
And for the upgrade hero power, first it upgrades your regular priest hero power, and then you change it. So you get your 2 damage to any target, but your opponent has a cool hero power and you don't get like the shadow form version of it or anything. Turns out a demon hunter with 2 attack for 1 mana is better. 2 damage for 1 mana is better than 2 damage for 2 mana, surprisingly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And we'll get into more specific anomaly talk when we go over the full list in the news, but just thought we could say our like baseline feelings here. In terms of straight life and ladder stuff, I actually hit legend with Control Priest.
Excuse me?
Which tells you how I was feeling about things in the moment after I was seeing all kinds of Tendril Yogg rogues. There was a lot of Miracle Rogue, and you know what's really good against Miracle Rogue? You guessed it, Control Priest. Now, I built my own, and so it's the style of Control Priest that interests you the most, which is min-maxing Power of Creation. So you have a limited minion pool. You got Dirty Rats, you got Aman'Thul, Behemoth, and
Ignis?
Yes, Ignis and Svalna, and then Yogg. And I'll tell you why Yogg. Because Yogg is actually a really good card outside of the Tendrils. I mean, the Tendrils are whatever, but the rogues are mostly using it to occasionally clear boards, mind control things, but what they really want to do is this nonsense of get a handful of Tendrils and, you know, breakdance the Yogg and keep playing the Tendrils. And to that I say, I see your Yogg plus Tendrils, play my own Yogg and Whirlpool. And of course they always have a Tendril
I
in
am
play.
so proud of you right now. You
I
have
knew you
no
would be.
idea.
So all these shenanigans of like, oh, let me Yogg breakdance, Yogg shadow step, Yogg for the rogue, and I'm like, cool, none of that. Go away.
Oh man.
And then, you know, you can still dirty rat their Denathrius or whatever. And I did.
Denathrius? Excuse me, Denathrius? They're playing
Oh, you
Denathrius?
see,
Oh, because
Well,
they're
so
playing a
you
million
have-
tendrils, so they pump. Oh my god, that's disgusting.
you're playing a million Tendrils, and it's actually kind of clever. Props to Kibler. It's his fault that this became so popular, but. And of course, other people refined it. Osmo is all over this deck. It's very much his jam. But you have Denathrius because in addition to playing all these Tendrils, once you get to the 10 mana spells, one of them that gets played a bunch is from the other side. So it's both a way of like you can infuse the Denathrius a bunch from playing from the other side with all the Tendrils, and if you manage to actually put it into play, it's this 10/10 that hits for lifesteal. And so it's very clever synergy. But yeah, I was having none of that. So once I sort of refined the list and which actually involved, you know, cutting things like ETC and just like making the minion pool specifically how I wanted. And I did end up going Renathal, but not having too many additional minions besides Renathal, just because I felt like you needed more of those spells to like things that you could just play to reduce Yogg. Because Yogg, I think, you know, outside of any other shenanigans, is really good for Control Priest. Because if you get it reduced quickly enough, and maybe it's even good enough to incentivize playing a like turbo draw, play a bunch of spell, kind of weird control-y, tempo-y priest.
Oh, Johnbury built one of those already, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to take a look at that. But you get it reduced enough, and you've got this free, you know, mass hysteria the opponent's board, or mind control their best thing, or get a bunch of tendrils, and you can play Power Chord Synchronize to do it again, or, you know, have extra copies from Power Creation. So it's really a powerful thing to be able to do over and over and over. And I feel like previously an issue that sometimes the Control Priest would have is like you might use your board clears and then you've got these minions that you had extra copies of, but they don't quite do enough. They don't quite board clear. But having access to that repetitive mass hysteria is just really, really good.
It's better than mass hysteria because it doesn't even they can't even
Yeah.
attack your minions.
Exactly.
So it's only other enemy. I didn't realize it until I finally just played a Yogg. I had to craft it because I opened packs because I had a bunch of warrior packs and stuff like that, and so
Yeah.
I ended up having to craft it. And I actually I'm glad it worked out this way because this means I don't have Cho'Gall in my collection. So I have all the cards except for Cho'Gall, which is exactly the way that I want it.
Me too.
But I didn't realize because I've been playing Control Warrior and it's just like a better version of Brawl in Control Warrior because it's gonna cost 5 mana by the time you want to play it, and then it only removes your opponent's minions. So it seemed pretty good there.
Mass
Yeah.
Hysteria was a good card, and
Yeah.
if you can get it cheaper and better, yeah. Or a Mind Control. That card was 10 mana at Mind Control.
Well,
Now it's
after they
0.
nerfed
I mean,
it,
who does that?
it was originally 8. You know.
uh-huh. Yeah, that was gross.
You can tell I am Hearthstone baby comparatively.
I didn't
Yeah,
play
I mean,
back then
Pyroblast
either.
was 8 too.
so,
it was
yeah.
it was a different time.
Yeah, that was an alpha. I didn't play an alpha, so I just heard the stories.
We yeah, exactly. We've heard the stories of these exactly, but yeah, Yogg just seems good. I kind of love that they managed with Yogg to both satisfy people who want a good Titan that they can play in anything with the 2 controlling effects, and then embrace the chaos for the people that want to do that with the tendrils. And since Titans are always like must remove minions, you know, control players can probably never use the tendril effect. and it's still a good card in their deck.
Yeah.
So
I have used Yogg, or I've played Yogg exactly once because I wasn't playing Control. I didn't have a ton of time, or really any time to play on Tuesday, unfortunately. And then I was playing things that were not Control. And I was looking at what's the Arcane Hunter list, and it had both Yogg and Prison. And I said,
oh
well,
my,
Yogg is new, so I'll play it, but Prison is not happening.
no way.
Took that out, put back the star power they had cut for it.
That's a choice.
You get
Star Power is an insane card. I cannot believe anyone would make that choice.
Hey, I could have a guaranteed board clear, or I could have maybe a board clear, or maybe punch myself in the face for 2 more mana.
for 2 more mana. So I put that back. I was surprised that it was taking a little long. That deck, it does have a lot of spells, but it also wants to kill you, so it's a little awkward to try to play the Yogg. So the only time that I got it down low enough where it really made sense to play it, it cost 0, and I was facing a Control Priest who actually had serious commitment to the bit. They realized I had played a cat trick on 3. They had just played Love Everlasting. They proceeded to not play a spell for 6 turns, which didn't really work out for them, but I was impressed. And they did almost get me in that they like it stabilized. I had them down to like 4 extra health, but I'm going, they probably have, a ton of healing. And so I'm like, well, I haven't played this card yet, and I have the podcast soon. So I play Yogg for 0. I did the tendrils. I played 5 tendrils. They did nothing. Well, they healed my face, luckily, not their face. And then they did nothing but destroy themselves and the Yogg. As I played them, they had done nothing, and then they played Corpse Explosion, and it all went away. But luckily, they didn't have any healing, so they conceded at 4. So that is my Yogg story. Well, my other Yogg story, I had played a couple of games of Enrage Warrior against a couple of Tentacle Rogues, and in the first one, they just kept getting really good hits off the tendrils, and then they stole. I did sort of a last-ditch Grom, and I was like, well, they'll probably just mind control this, and then of course they go, oops, mind control it and kill it. So the next time that I saw a Tentacle Rogue, as in Rage Warrior, on 2 they played a Tendril. It cast the 1-mana new Warlock spell that says all of your opponent's minions cost health next turn. My my hand was Grom, Battleworn Faceless, Remornia, and the location. I actually misplayed it and only got 29 damage instead of 30 damage because I could have gotten an anima tick, but it turned out not to matter very much.
29 for sure. Yeah.
Oh my god.
29 leads to a concession. Yeah, I didn't even have time to hit the face. I just had enough time to take the screenshot. So
We knew it was going to happen at some point.
I could see them hesitate after it played that and then go, well, hopefully I don't get punished too much for this. But of course I had the perfect hand to punish them for it. So
Did you emote thanks after that?
I was too busy getting the screenshot and laughing. I was like, no way am I missing these screenshots. I have to get one of the history and one of the board state so that I can properly show the whole story. And I was successfully able to. But I feel like if your whole deck is about scamming people with tendrils, it's only fair that it backfires sometimes. So of all decks for that to happen, I feel least bad and most satisfied about it being the Tentacle Rogue doing it to themselves.
Yeah, and Rage Warrior is definitely what I have been playing the most of after hitting Legend. And once people toned down on the Yogg Rogues a bit, so now you see Mech Rogues sometimes. But yeah, Rage Warrior just feels so solid with Faceless. And there's a couple versions, but I really am enjoying running Acolyte of Pain again. Like that.
Oh.
As a 1/4 with the location just brings me so much joy. Doing like Acolyte of Pain on curve, hit it with the location, and then you're drawing to this big Faceless turn where you either are copying the Anima Extractor or copying the Charge Minion. It's just been fantastic. Got me into top 1K.
No, that's good.
Very nice.
Which you are also hanging out there, Wicked.
Yeah. I got into top 1K with Control Warlock right before on Monday night, right before the mini set dropped. I was unexpectedly bullying Mech Rogues. Like I ran into a lot of Mech Rogues, and I just seemed to bully the hell out of them. There was one that I just kind of kept running them out of stuff, and then eventually found burn 6 cards to burn the last 6 cards of their deck, and they finally kind of gave up. But and there was one like Totem Shaman that I ran into who had built like a 15 something Gigantotem on like turn 5 or so. No, it was like turn 7. So I had pulled I had like I was sitting with Finley in my hand, and I didn't really have a great answer for it, and I was there was an opportunity for me to Finley on 6 just to get better cards because my hand was kind of sucked, but also I didn't feel pressured at the time. And then all of a sudden, here come the clowns. So I had gotten a Sunwell off of a Watcher of the Sun, and I figured, okay, I'm just gonna Sunwell and Spinley and then get better cards and then get rid of this. And the Sunwell gave me Chaotic Consumption, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a solution. So we don't need to play Finley, we'll just kill it. And then that got rid of them. And once you clear their board once and you get on board, then they can't really do much. And so I got into just into top 1000, and then I've basically just been playing Odin Warrior since the mini set because I've been still extraordinarily tired after work the last couple days, so I didn't really have it's both being inside top 1000, so not really wanting to experiment much and not trusting myself to play very well with a deck that I don't know. And I mean, not that I'm being precious about my rank, but also I really like to not throw away MMR if I can help it. But yeah, I ran into one of the Yogg Rogues on the first day, and they played a whole bunch of Tendrils and 2 Yoggs in one turn, and they had like the, you know, the thing, and I just like, okay, well, sanitize, goodbye. And oh no, you know what it was? They played like a million cards. They had like a 10-10 thing from the location. And I think I let it hit me once. And then I killed it with 2 Bellowing Flames. And then they hero powered for the next 3 turns straight. Because they put everything in, they got all in on that 10-10, and they just didn't have anything else. And so when the rogue is just pressing hero power pass and doing their best priest impression, then it's a little bit easier to get through and stabilize in time for when the next wave comes. I did lose to a control priest with it today, who had played 4 Theatars, desperately looking for my Odin, which was still in my deck. But I also couldn't draw fast enough because I got the Shifter Xeris anomaly, and I just had stuff in my hand I couldn't get rid of in order to be able to draw with the 2/2. So they eventually just barely ran me out of damage before I was able to kill them, because I just couldn't draw fast enough. So, you know, it's I was, and it's funny because like one of the Theatars was like on turn 8, and they're like slamming the Theatar. I'm like, dude, if I had Odin, I would have played it. I have 8 mana. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's not like I clearly don't have Odin. Why don't you wait for me to like Chorus Riff or something before you slam the next Theatar? But you know, when I don't draw it and I can't draw fast enough to find it, it doesn't matter. So, but I'm still like, I'm just outside of top 1,000 now. I had that and like a Miracle Druid that I ran into that I hadn't faced before, and then died from 30. So. Because they get, we'll talk about Miracle Druid in the explanations, but basically they draw their deck, and then they get a Wind Fury weapon off of the Ignis, and then they play the spell that spends all your mana to give you that much attack.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's enough between the attack on the weapon, if they're getting a 10 mana weapon plus, you know, 10 attack. That's 30. So.
Wait. I suppose if they haven't used Pounce or anything, that's like a little extra.
Yeah, they can get through some armor if they have to, and they've been making big minions over the course of the game that I've been having to remove. So, yeah.
Were they also
so-
doing the minions that buff the hero power? Because I saw one of those today.
No, and they weren't running Gadgets and Auctioneer either, which is something else that people have been playing. You know, which is more of a throwback than Acolyte of Pain. So.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to talk about all kinds of segments before actually getting into them, so we should probably head on over to news to discuss said anomalies and general thoughts on each of them.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So we did get patch 27.4 with the fall of Ulduar. Yogg-Saron has escaped and is spreading his anomalies across Hearthstone. So the mini set is now available. You can buy it for $14.99 USD, 2,000 gold. You can get the golden version for $69.99 USD or 10,000 gold. The all golden version comes with a diamond copy of the Yogg-Saron Unleashed Legendary, which is the new Yogg in the set. So if that's something you're interested in and have the means, feel free to do that.
Tempting. It's so pretty.
I mean, you could think about how many gold diamond tendrils you could get. I guess they're golden tendrils because they don't have a diamond version of it, but I guess they would be golden tendrils.
I don't use Yogg for that, but I just seeing other people playing it and having like just not even the golden, the regular one, because I had a bunch of packs after the heroic Brawliseum, and so I have not purchased any kind of mini set, but I'm just sitting there like maybe I do it this one time because Diamond Yogg is really, really cool looking.
Yeah, and Diamond Tendrils also sounds like the name of an upcoming Blizzlet episode. So, you know. As we discussed at length last week, we have the full list of anomalies. Anomalies are in 100% of games until this coming Tuesday, which is September 26th. And after that, they will be in 25% of games through patch 28.0, which is the next expansion, which will be late November, early December. And if you have Cho'Gall in your deck, you can get 2 anomalies if that triggers, or if both of you have them in your deck, it'll 100% trigger, and you'll get 2 anomalies when that's live. It is in 100% of standard, wild, twist, casual, arena, and practice mode games. My understanding is that they also are in friendly matches. So those of you who are playing THL or the upcoming Masters Tour may have to contend with that.
Yep.
I don't think we need to enumerate all of the anomalies on, I don't think we need to read down the list, because I think most people have seen them. But I think we can probably talk about like what, and we've touched on it a little bit, but what our experiences are with anomalies over the last couple days, and how we're feeling about them.
Yeah. So I think it was described very well by Sottle for me. And
As usual.
yeah, Sottle's a very articulate man. He's but just to take an excerpt here, he says, I've just found them to be generally net negative. I also played a lot of the same ones on the first day and found that mildly irritating. Was I then pleased when I got a different one? Not really. Relieved maybe, but not pleased. I don't think too often I've had an anomaly that made me have a better time than a vanilla game of Hearthstone. I can, however, fully appreciate that this might be the competitive player mentality, as I think largely the good players are starting to figure out what the best strategy is to just ignore the anomaly and play sensible normal Hearthstone most of the time. To more casual player base, just the effect of having something new happen at the start of a game might be a net positive in and of itself, as long as we can emulate the ones that are actively game ruining. And that takes me to the ones that I feel are most actively game ruining, and I think most people feel are most actively game ruining, which are the shuffle anomaly and the replace your hero power anomaly that you talked about earlier, Megesa.
Yeah.
Yes, I think those are two of the ones that are most likely to make it so you can't really do what you wanted to do with your deck. I think having to pivot a little bit is one thing versus not, for some decks, the hero power is really important, or the shuffle in. Well, first of all, if it's control versus control, that's just crazy. But then also whatever got played early on tends to just keep coming back. So you're only getting your early game cards. You're never getting to the late game card you were trying to draw to. To some extent, you have that with the only draw something you can afford this turn one. I think that one's a little bit more, it can help, but it can also mean that you just like never draw your Odin or whatever it was that
and you actually can't draw Yogg. Because it looks at the cost on the card, not the actual cost. So it's always 15, and you literally will never draw it.
Well, you can draw it, I think, on subsequent draws, but yeah, you'll never draw it.
Your natural draw will never draw it. Yeah, you need to be drawing extra cards or tutoring it or something in order to actually get it out of your deck.
And be lucky while you're doing that. Yeah. I mean, I do think one thing I wonder, I think we have a sense that the average, more casual player might be more likely to appreciate these, but I also know from people, friends I have who are extremely casual Hearthstone players, they're looking at this going, wait a minute, this is another thing I have to worry about. They feel like the game for really beginner players already has so much going on that here's now the rules are changing on them every time they try to play a game. And, I think that's a much smaller subset of players. But also, if you're playing fewer games, also if you get an anomaly that made it really difficult for your particular deck, that's like a bigger percentage of the games that you're playing than if you're more competitive and playing a lot. If I get one where my hero power gets overwritten, and that was really bad for me, and it's frustrating, but I'm like, oh well, I've played so many games today. It's like a small percentage of my day. So I think there might, I probably, it's mostly the more competitive players who are frustrated, but I can see there potentially being some arguments as well. I mean, if you're enjoying these, like, more power to you. This is what is happening, and I think, please don't let us talk you into not having fun with them. If you're having fun with them, then you're having fun with them, and that's awesome.
Yeah, like none of this is to say, like, if you're enjoying this that you're wrong. Like, I think that we're all kind of the same type of player, which is casual competitive, which is, I mean, the focus of this podcast, or sometimes competitive depending on the scenario. So, like, when things like this come up, right, it's changing things in a way that feels more unfair than usual because of the impact that it has on games. Like, I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of, because I've played a decent amount of Battlegrounds since Anomalies came out in Battlegrounds. I've also been playing more than a fair amount of TFT, which has a similar mechanic to Anomalies in this set. The only difference is that it shows you 3 at the beginning of the game, and then everybody votes, and then basically it picks one of the votes at random. So that, like, if there's one that everybody hates, everybody can just ignore it, and there's no chance of it happening. But the thing with an auto battler is that you're starting from 0 when the game starts. So you can take the anomaly and change your strategy from the beginning of the game with that in mind. In Constructed, yes, the anomaly's happening before the mulligan, but half of your game is deck selection and card selection in your deck. So you've already made a number of choices based on there not being an anomaly, and then the anomaly can come in and just wreck it, right? Like, if you're playing Shadow Priest and you get replace your hero power, that's pretty devastating. And I kept thinking, I mean, it didn't help, certainly, that the shuffle a card you played was the first one I encountered when I was already forcing myself to keep an open mind, and then that's the first one that I run into. And it made it really hard for me to draw my Odin, which is, again, I'm noticing it, that it's making it harder for me to do what I want to do. But I kept kind of thinking about it after the game, and, like, the best that I was feeling is that the anomalies just didn't matter. That was the best case. Like, I never felt like it was improving the game. I felt like it was impacting the game, certainly. But, like, I never felt like I was having more fun because the anomaly went off, right? Yeah. Just personally. And I'm not saying that that's not necessarily the case for everybody, but they either feel too impactful or they don't feel impactful enough. And either way, it's kind of like an extra overhead of why are we doing it, right?
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, that a lot of people who are loving these are like, oh, I wish it was even more crazy. And I think certainly if you're going to do that, but to some extent, this kind of thing in general feels better to me as a tavern brawl, as honestly a twist, right? If there was an entire month of Twist that was just like anomaly Twist, and they were even crazier, I think that would be interesting. People could engage with it. They could go over Twist, play with anomalies, and, like, that would be its own twist. But forcing everyone to do this, and to me, most egregiously in friendlies as well. Like, the fact that there's going to be 25% chance during the Masters Tour that people are going to have to play with anomalies, that's just awful.
I would like to think that if that happens, that they will allow the players to re-roll the match and just start
over. They will not. There's no way. Because it's probably, from their perspective, like a showcase thing of, this is even better for viewers. Look, they had to play with this crazy thing. Except I think a certain number of viewers are going to feel the pain of the competitors and be like, wow, they got completely shafted. You know, I don't know if it's going to affect anyone's deck choices or if they're just going to hope that they don't get screwed. But imagine someone's playing Control Warlock and then they don't have a hero power anymore, right? Like they swap hero powers at the opponent.
Or they're playing Control Warlock and they get the upgraded hero power and they don't have to pay health for
Right.
drawing a card, right? Like it's the
yeah.
other way too, right?
Right. And now they have been saying that they're getting a lot of feedback, and I think particularly with like some of the Reddit posts and things of, you know, someone queuing up even Shaman in Wild.
Oh gosh.
And then getting their hero power replaced and then just exiting the client and being like, I guess I'm not playing for the next week. I think that has been on some of the more casual side of people who like maybe don't play a ton, maybe don't have a ton of decks. They're like, this is the thing I play is even Shaman in Wild. And then they get this anomaly where their deck just doesn't function. And they're like, I guess I'm not playing this week. So I think there's been enough negative sentiment around specifically the swap hero power and the shuffle that those are not going to stick around. When they announced anomalies to some, you know, negative reception, they did say that they would be, you know, balancing or curating the pool around how people were feeling, and people definitely feel very negatively about those two anomalies.
Yeah, and I think that they make a little bit more likely certain games where things just go off the rails. So I had a game where I had games when I was playing Shadow Priest where my hero power got interfered with, and that didn't feel good. But I also had a game which made for a very funny screenshot, but it was so not my skill that I didn't even feel that great about it, where all of the cards in your opening hand were discounted by 1, and I happened to have the perfect hand for this on the coin. I had two Arms Dealers and a Shadowed Spirit and an Undying Allies, or is that the one that gives all your minions
Undead Reborn.
Yeah,
Undead Reborn. So I end turn 1 with 3 Reborn minions, and my Shadowed Spirit was a 6/3. My opponent played it out, but it didn't work out well for them. They did not have a similarly explosive hand, and you know, even though statistically it'll work out in your favor as often as it doesn't, especially if you're playing a lot of games and you're not in the Masters Tour, the fact that it wasn't feeling great for me even when it did work in my favor was going towards your point of it being mostly neutral to negative for me. It's not that there was like never a fun state created by it, but less often. I can't remember who said this in the Discord, so I'm sorry not to give this person credit, but someone was talking about how this is a little bit different than one of the other main things which you can't control, which is, you know, you can't control your opponent's deck, right? That's a major part of your experience. But what you can do is kind of know at your rank bracket, what are people playing? It's not like that. It's almost never there's 20 decks and it's completely random which one you're going to face, and they're all totally different. It's, you can, if you're the kind of person who's playing more to win, you're playing for the outcome, playing the game on its terms, you can plan ahead for this and say, well, you know, this type of deck is really popular. I'm going to try to counter it, or I'm going to join them. I know, Edel, that's something you often like to do is when there's a Meta Tyrant, counter
Even
the
if it
Meta
means playing
Tyrant
Control
for something
Priest.
no one sees coming. Even if it's Control Priest. And so, and you know, and that can be something already still that's frustrating enough, though, if there's a deck that you don't like queuing into. So adding more of that where there's 20 and you really can't plan for it in your deck selection, you can't pivot your strategy often as much to it, can be frustrating. As you know, obviously there's always some luck involved in a game like Hearthstone, even just what order you draw your cards in. But I personally am a player who tends to appreciate some more consistency. Obviously, this is not chess, but we don't want it to be that way necessarily. But yeah, most of the time it hasn't felt personally like it's making really interesting strategic choices. It's just making the non-games for good and ill for myself a little more common.
I did have one game, and funnily enough, with the shuffle anomaly, that I was proud of myself for just outplaying my opponent, probably because I've had to deal with that anomaly a bunch and I hate it so much that I have, warped my playing when I get it to try and optimize, which is basically I just keep card draw. Or, if you're playing something where you really need a certain card, like I would keep Odin as warrior with that anomaly. And so I was actually up against an Odin warrior and as an Rage warrior. And I kept Light of the Phoenix, which is the draw spell, and Acolyte of Pain. And I played a bunch of Acolyte of Pains that game, and they kept, overdrawing me. So I was burning all these cards, and I'm like, do you understand that I literally cannot, mill out here? And with stuff getting shuffled in, burning is really low odds of negatively impacting me and just guarantees I have a full hand all the time. Now, it did happen that I kept drawing Acolyte of Pains, but I'm like, well, I'll just keep playing them. Eventually, I will burn the Acolyte of Pains and get the cards I want. And, that is kind of what ended up happening. But, yeah, they just kept using things like Bladestorm or the forged copy of the deal 5, do 5 pings to just draw me a bunch of cards. And I'm sitting here okay, well, you're shuffling in these removal tools that don't replace themselves. And meanwhile, I'm playing Acolyte of Pains that are definitely replacing themselves and then some. So I'm sitting here with just a full hand of stuff waiting to just murder them.
I feel like that is the best case scenario of them, right? Where you've adjusted you had an avenue to adjust your play in a meaningful way and adapt to it and then be rewarded for that.
Yeah. But you also have to be playing a lot to be seeing the anomalies enough repeatedly to understand how to play around them. And there's 20 of them. And especially once they go to 25%, it's going to be, I'm worried even more jarring because right now, okay, so you see Twist Reality, you know how to play around it. You'll probably have forgotten by the next time that it comes around when they go down to 25%, because it's only going to be in 1 out of 4 games. And then there's a 1 out of 20 chance that you're going to roll that. So it's a 1 out of 80 every game to roll that. So 80 games is a long time, even if you're not a priest main. And so you're not going to necessarily have that kind of built up knowledge like you will, that muscle memory that you will when you're seeing it a lot right now. I mean, even 1 out of 20 games is not relatively a lot, but things aren't always evenly distributed anyway.
Yeah. But I think it says a lot that my favorite anomaly is Your Eyes Betray You, which is both players' cards are golden.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I mean, I don't even like that because when I'm playing priest, it doesn't do anything.
You can't show off that you actually really had them golden.
Right. I mean, who actually has, golden priest legendaries other than me and I guess Zeddy? I don't know. But
by some twist of fate, I keep opening them, but
yeah, so does Sidisi, and then he dusts them to make hunter cards. So, But anyway, so I think that they're definitely, the team's definitely listening to feedback. I'm sure that they will have some changes. I mean, they made a lot of changes with anomalies in Battlegrounds. I would expect that, some levers that they can pull are just pulling some out of the pool or changing how they work. So we'll see what happens. They seem to have plenty of ideas for Battlegrounds anomalies, so they might have some on the bench waiting to come in. We'll see. But that is that's there until Tuesday, and then it'll only be 25% of games. So if you don't like it, worst comes to worst, just wait a couple days, and then things will be relatively back to normal more often than not. We are getting a new in-game event, the Great Yog Escape, which is starting on Tuesday, September 26th. You will be able to, just play Hearthstone, you'll get through it. You can get 1 standard pack then 1 Titans pack, and then there's a bundle of 1 Titans pack, 1 Golden Standard pack, 1 regular standard pack, and then at 4,500 event points, you get the Cabal N'Zoth portrait, which I believe is a Warlock portrait. So that looks pretty cool. I love my N'Zoth portrait, so if it's anything like the regular N'Zoth portrait, I am interested. So that will be very cool. We also got another legendary skin, Cthulhu. So Cthulhu is a druid legendary skin. It is just the eye because Cthulhu's body is just the eye. So that is the entirety of the portrait, and then it's got little stalks that go around and it does things. That is, I don't have the cost on it. It's if you're buying this, you probably don't care how much it costs.
$25 USD.
That sounds about right. Yeah, and which probably comes with 5 druid packs, as well. It's a druid skin because Matt London played the most druid with Cthulhu, so that's why it's a druid skin. That's the reason. Whatever it is. This is amazing. So this is something that I just ran into for the first time tonight, like playing against it, and it moves around a lot. Like a lot. And as a neurodivergent individual who has problems with sensory processing, I was actually getting a headache through the game playing against it, just because it moves around so much, and it you're focusing on your opponent's hand, right, which is right above the portrait, and then there's this eye that's just like it's looking up and down, it's wiggling around when they play a card, it's in pretty much constant motion for the entirety of the game, like more so than any other legendary portrait, maybe other than Blingtron. I think Blingtron's the only other one that moves around like this much. So it's I've put in a formal request that there's some way to reduce the motion or turn off the motion if you squelch it, or some sort of a setting in settings or something like that as an accessibility feature, because like I was in physical pain playing against it today. It's really cool. Like it is fantastically cool. I just wish it wasn't moving around so much that I couldn't enjoy it. But I imagine it's going to be relatively popular because it's incredibly cool what they did with the portrait. It's much more so, it's very different than the legendary portraits that we've seen, which are basically just like WoW renders or whatever. It's something very different, which is, to be credited. My own personal, issues aside, I guess. Have either of you seen this or bought it?
Have said that this really feels like a legendary portrait, and that it's the first one that they've been interested in, and how much they love it. And then, the flip side of that is other folks saying, "Dear God, why does this move around so much?" So I think the more of these that are going to exist and have all kinds of movement, etc., the more pressing of a matter it is to have a solution for people whom it is a problem. And just either having Squelch also disable movements on the enemy portrait, or another button like Squelch to disable movement on the enemy portrait, I think would be super welcome. They could just do the same thing, right? You right click on the hero, and then there's a Squelch bubble, and then there's a I don't know what word they would come up with, but like a don't move bubble that you can select.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that if you're the kind of, if you're affected by this, you probably just do both, right? Like just make it simple, just have Squelch just stop the, the way I see Squelch is just like, I don't want to deal with whatever my opponent is doing. And that includes all of the little movements from the hero portrait. So I think the simplest thing would just be if you Squelch it, it just stops moving. That would be great. Or you put it as a toggle in options, like, disable motion from hero portraits or something, right? Like that's something else that they could do just to turn that, just to not, because that's, I understand the, because I don't want to get into the auto Squelch debate again, but I do know that they've said they don't want to auto Squelch because then people will forget to turn it back on. But I think for something like this, where if it's an accessibility issue, just having one switch to turn it off would be fine. But Either way, I don't care as long as that eyeball just stops moving when I'm playing against it. Like I was saying before we started recording, like I was playing against a Miracle Druid right before the stream today, or the podcast today. And I died from 30 because they had a Wind Fury weapon from Ignis, and then they played the Forbidden Fruit, which turns all your mana into attack power. And I was actually relieved because that meant I got to stop looking at the Cthulhu. So that's not, again, I'm not necessarily typical, but that's accessibility features are for making it so that everybody can enjoy the game the same way. So.
Yep.
So that being said, that's it for Constructed. We did get some Battlegrounds updates. They changed the way that the damage cap works again. So now the damage cap is that you can only take up to 15 damage per turn. Before it originally was until one player got eliminated, and then of course somebody would leave on turn 1, and then there would be no damage cap. Then they changed it to until 8 turns in, and the first person got eliminated. And now what they're saying is that the damage cap is going to persist until 4 players have been eliminated. So it's going to persist until the top 4. The primary goal of the damage cap in Battlegrounds is to protect players from taking too much damage too early. We've heard a lot of feedback from the community. The system was not fully achieving that goal, so now we're expanding even further. We'll closely monitor this change and make additional changes to the damage system as needed. I think tier 7 minions have also kind of exacerbated this, right? Because like Thorum in particular gives you a tier 7, which if you win and keep that on the board just adds to a lot of the damage output. And I don't... Again, I know I keep comparing BGs to TFT, but like in TFT, I kind of feel like I know how much damage, how many turns I can afford to lose before I'm going to be dead, right? Like it's generally like in the late game, you're going to take like 15 to 20 damage for a loss out of 100. And so you can kind of plan like, okay, I've got 2 more turns to figure out what I need to do. I never really feel like that in Battlegrounds. Like I feel like, oh, I'm finally stabilizing and now I'm dead. So hopefully this damage cap change will help fix that, but I wonder if they have to reevaluate how they're totaling up damage in general to make it feel a little bit different.
Yeah, I know it's been mentioned before that like maybe tokens should all do 1 damage, even if they are like higher tier or something, right? Like,
yeah,
because sometimes things get summoned and they summon a higher tier and deal that tier damage, and that's rough.
Right.
But yeah, there's some sentiment that maybe now people are surviving like way too long. I mean, I did think when they said top 4 that it's like, oh, wait. So you only lose the damage cap once you're top 4? Like that's a lot. So there's a lot more opportunity for someone to like really not have a great board, but have played so much for tempo early on that they're just not dying, even though they're not scaling. And so that just kind of prolongs the game and makes things awkward and I don't know, less fun. We want to maximize fun, right? So maybe they'll do another pass and switch it to like when there's 6 players left or something, right? Like after 2 people have been eliminated. I'm sure they'll find a balance, but they probably had to go this far initially to know that it needed to be somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we also got additional anomalies added to Battlegrounds. We're not going to read all of them, but one of them, the Yogg-Saron, at the start of each turn, spin the wheel of Yogg-Saron. Each turn the wheel is spun and 1 result is chosen for all players. So if you were worried, again, this is why people were concerned when they saw the constructed anomalies coming out, because this is the kind of thing that's happening in Battlegrounds. But that sounds like it's, a little bit more in the spirit of what Battlegrounds is going to do. They also have new cosmetics, including Bartender Roberta. So, another woman bartender. It went a long time before they had any women bartenders, so now they're making up for lost time. And I believe the first is, the first woman of color bartender option, I believe. Right?
Awesome. I think, yeah, she just looks very, very cool.
Depends how you categorize certain fantastical
I mean, I guess yes. If you're gonna say that the paparazzo is green, then yes. But that's not quite what I meant.
Well, I thought there was like a different species of bartender that existed, but I think it's always strange, like how you want to categorize, like, is a dragonborn a person of color? Right? If we're thinking of like, you know, Baldur's Gate races kinds of thing, like that's kind of murky discussion topic when you
No,
get
Murky's
into,
a
like,
Murloc.
fantasy. Yeah, like Elise is an elf, right?
Yeah.
I think a night elf.
There is also, I found a list. Lillian Singh is human and Asian, but
Yeah.
and then it was like, are orcs people of color? But then
Well,
that's a little
I mean,
questionable. Let's
I
not
mean,
get
I guess
into that.
if we're talking about feeling represented in the game, right, and having having somebody who looks like you represented in the game, right? Like we can get into semantics about what color means, but I think we all know what it means, and you know that's cool that you can have a woman of color as a bartender and have somebody who, if you are a woman of color and you want to see yourself represented in the game, then that's an option for you. So.
Yeah, definitely more and specific options is better.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want to say, have the representation in a fantasy race only, right? That's
Exactly.
not the same
Yeah,
thing at all.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the Twist seasonal update. We talked about it last week. It's the same second verse, same as the first, except that you can add more cards to your deck. So you can play with a deck from anywhere between 30 to 40 cards and a life total equal to the number of cards you put in your deck. You can play a 30 card deck. It's the same 30 card deck you played in Twist this season and still start with 30 health. You can play 31 if you can't decide what card to cut and start with 31 health, or you can go full Renathal without having to put Renathal in and start with 40 health. All the sets are the same. All the rules are the same. That's the only difference. So, it's basically an extension of the existing Twist season, but with a little bit of a additional, wrinkle. So I almost said Twist, but
I think the real Twist season update will be when they announce the balance changes for Twist/Wild, because Chamber of Viscidius has got to go.
Yeah, there was a Vicious Syndicate Twist meta report today, and it was basically there's Hunter, Rogue, Warrior, Warlock, and that's it. And the rest of the classes do not exist. So that would be good to change. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure we have heard that that's coming, and Chamber of Viscidius, I don't know.
Viscidius, yeah.
Chamber of Broken is also a problem in Wild, so that's clearly going to get addressed as well. We got a new dual season starting with the new mini set. Ratings were reset. Current runs were concluded. They added Rise of Shadows, Fall of Ulduar, Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, the Grand Tournament, and Blackrock Mountain into the initial deck building and all the card pools. The Gadgetzan and the Grand Tournament were already added to card pools in a prior update. Now they're being added to initial deck building as well. So you can, which hopefully will I don't know if they fixed any of the bugs that they had around not being able to add like the Gadgetzan or Grand Tournament or GVG versions of the Cabbage of Time cards. But hopefully if they didn't, this should fix it, because they'll just make those sets legal and then we get out of the problem. So they removed a number of cards, including Tess and Justicar, Trueheart, Raz of the Chained, etc., from initial deck building and all card pools. They banned Yogg-Saron Unleashed from all card pools, but it is legal for initial deck building. So you can only get one Yogg, you can't get multiple Yoggs. And Astral Communion, Aviana, Patch the Pirate, and Wilfred Fizzlebang have been banned from draft buckets. I don't know what Wilfred Fizzlebang did to make people angry, but I'm very interested in that story. So,
perhaps be bad.
Maybe
that's always a possibility.
Maybe that's what he did. Yeah. Also, we have a new arena season. The sets are Core, Path of Arthas, Rise of Shadows, Madness of the Dark Moon Fair, Forge in the Barrens, Festival of Legends, and Titans. So, arena enjoyers, you can look forward to that. We got a number of impactful bug fixes, and the one that we need to focus on the most, because that is going to be the most potentially impactful for your standard games, is that they changed the way that copying Sargeras works. So prior to this change, if you copied an enemy Sargeras, all of Sargeras's Titan abilities would interact with the portal on the opposing side of the board. So if you press taunts on the copy of the let's say you reverb a Sargeras, and you press give the minions that are summoned from the Twisting Nether +2 health and taunt, all of the minions that would come out of your opponent's portal would get the taunt. They have changed it so Sargeras will no longer be connected to a portal on the opposite side of the board. What this means is a couple of things. One is that if you copy an opponent's Sargeras and you try to use any ability, it will do nothing, which is important because the way that you normally interact with that is you press send all minions into Twisting Nether, and it sends them all into the opponent's Twisting Nether. Now that all that will do is remove the ability to get it one step closer to being able to attack before it inevitably dies, which it's not going to. Also, if you copy your own Sargeras, it will now look for the friendly portal, and it will interact with the portal. So I think this worked normally, but you could have a scenario where they reverbed your Sargeras, or like, actually, I think what it would be is like if you got it Gigafinned and then you got the Sargeras back out of the Gigafin, right?
Then now it didn't work. Yeah. So the way that it works now is it just looks for a friendly portal.
Yes.
So it doesn't care which one it initially summoned, and if it gets Gigafinned and then gets out of the Gigafin, it doesn't lose it. If you somehow got Shadow Step, out of a chaotic tendril and brought it back to your hand and, replayed it, then you would. Then
it would affect both portals. Yeah.
Actually, so Hat tested it because we were asking Hat, wait a minute, what if you have two portals? He said he couldn't get it to recognize both. It appears to just find one and then stop. It has a while loop instead of a for all loop.
Oh wow, he's getting into coding speak. I'm impressed. Okay.
While we haven't found a portal yet. Anyway, yeah. I don't know what the actual code looks like. I didn't see any code, but it just looks for a friendly one. What this also means is if you have a portal and they have a portal, and then you copy their Sargeras, its abilities will affect your portal.
Yes.
So you can get extra health on your taunts or extra 6/8.
Yeah, I believe I have done this where I was getting imps that were 3/6 taunts. I forget exactly the circumstances that led up to that, but I think overall a great quality of life change. The fact that it just means, okay, if you have a portal and somehow you get more Sargeras, you can use those abilities again is pretty cool. It simplifies things. The only thing that makes it awkward is that we have to unlearn the previous behavior of being able to copy an opposing Sargeras to Twisting Nether, which was really the only scenario, right? That was because usually it was they used the future demons have plus health and taunt, and then had a board that you wanted to get rid of, and an easy way to do that was to reverb their Sargeras and Twisting Nether all their stuff away. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, there was that
anymore.
Yeah, there was that one glorious week when Control Warlock was new and nobody knew how this interaction worked, and that people would summon 6/6s out of your portal after they reverbed your Sargeras. That was lovely. That's not going to happen anymore, regardless. So be aware of that, because that is a very impactful change, and it's going to be some unlearning of behavior that you're going to need to do, especially if you're in the mage. I mean, in the mirror, it'll be a little bit more. It may make a little bit more sense, but as a mage, that was something you would often do is, copy the Sargeras and poof the board, and now you can remove the Sargeras, but you're not going to deal with the rest of the board that way. Soul Eater Scythe will now generate a signature version of the card it consumed if it was signature to begin with. So this was something, I think Jotun was the main issue with this one, where people would put signature Jotun in there in their scythe, and then it would come out as like a golden Jotun or a regular Jotun. I guess it depends on whether your scythe was regular or golden. It would pop out those versions. So now it's if you put in a signature version, you'll get a signature version out. One amalgam band, drone deconstructor, from the scrap heap, elemental inspiration, power slider, party animal, rockbuster voon, and roaring applause all had text up only updates for clarity, no functional changes.
Okay.
So they fixed a bug where weapons that adjusted their stats while in play were not updating. I think this was the Spirit Claws bug in Wild.
Yeah. Or Twist. I was trying to do
Twist,
a burn spell damage shaman and decided, well, this super doesn't work if Spirit Claws is non-functional, because the whole point is to have this 3-attack weapon for 1 mana, 1 mana for 9 damage. But if it's not working, basically what would happen is it would display as 3-attack, but then you would make the attack and it would only deal 1 damage.
Oh, that's so much worse.
No. That's so much worse than the other way.
Especially bad if you attacked an enemy minion expecting to kill it, and then you just took 3 damage or whatever and dealt 1 damage to it. Really feels bad. So glad it's fixed.
Yeah. So they also fixed a bug where Prison of Yogg-Saron failed to contain Yogg's chaotic energies, resulting in spells that sometimes targeting something other than what was selected. I don't know what would cause this, but that sounds like it's even more of a feels bad if you're on the other side of Prison of Yogg-Saron than normal. So that's good. They fixed a bug where Spider, I'm not saying all the leet speak, I'm sorry, would still lose stealth after 1 turn if it was granted permanent stealth by an outside source like a Sparkbot. So
the bug that was doing good in the world. Did we?
Yeah, really. I think I call that a feature, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so that basically the stealth for 1 turn was overriding the permanent stealth, and so the permanent stealth is now taking priority. Fix a bug where Forged Bellowing Flames effect happened all at once instead of in 2 steps, resulting in it not hitting minions spawned from the initial target's death rattle or reborn effect. I didn't realize that this was how it was supposed to work. I thought it was just adding the 5 damage, but apparently it's not an and. It's not an and, it's a then. So it actually, if you kill a death rattle with the initial 5 damage, then the 5 ping should be able to hit whatever comes out. So that's an important change to be aware of if you're playing Warrior. Or playing against Warrior, I suppose.
Yeah, I was very disappointed earlier when my Anima Extractor was killed with the 5 damage, and then I didn't get any hand buffs for the pings hitting my other minions.
Yeah, that's a big deal too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's gone before the pings go off. That is also a very big deal. So kill the Anima Extractor with the first half of it, unless you're playing against Edel, and then don't do that.
Well, then you should have just coin conceded.
Well, that's true. That's true. You wouldn't even have gotten to that point. They fixed the bug where Love Everlasting's discount was not used up if the first spell played was countered. I'm surprised that... Well, I guess I'm not surprised. That's a weird thing, but usually when the spell's countered, like, it's just as though it never happened, but I guess you still have paid for it. So that does kind of make sense. But that's kind of like that's the kind of thing where if this was match, you could get a judge over at the table arguing for a good 5 minutes before you got a resolution to it. So they fixed a bug where Lady Nazjar's transformation in your hand was visible by your opponent, so that's good to not give away information. Fixed a bug where Alakir Winds of Time did not always get the optimal combination of cards to maximize draws. So I guess that would mean that where it's drawing Wind Fury, Taunt, Divine Shield, Charge, right?
Right.
So if you have something that has 2 keywords, then it would draw, and it drew the one with both keywords before, one with 1, then you might miss out on one of the draws. So now it'll draw things with multiple keywords later, I guess, is how that works.
Yeah.
Fixed a bug where Thunderbluff's Valiant new battle cry effect was not treated as a battle cry. I'm not sure what it was treated as, but sure. I guess it wasn't getting doubled with Bran, I guess is the upshot of that. But fixed a bug where on the turn Jotun the Eternal was played, its effect would trigger on the next spell drawn, even if it was not the first spell drawn that turn. So if you that's got to be a very edge case, because you would have to have played it and then have already drawn a spell and then play it, and then I guess that would be the Relic of Dimensions use case, right? Where you drew it off Relic of Dimensions and then you continued to draw, and then it would double it after the Relic because you had the Jotun discounted from the Relic of Dimensions. That's the only way that I would see that would be relevant. But fix a bug where Jotun the Eternal caused a crash when its effect played Glide. I would also argue that's a feature, but that's not for me to say. In Battlegrounds, blood gems can now target minions in the tavern, not just friendly minions.
Huh.
I was watching Sway's stream last night, and she was saying that this was important, but I don't know why. So
I don't know enough about. I mean, I'm thinking you could get cards out of your hand when you can't buy something and then freeze it.
Yeah,
there might be some card interactions that are important with things in the tavern. I don't know enough about Battlegrounds to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see, freezing something in the shop. You've got a build where you get all kinds of blood gems, and you just spend them all on the thing in the shop, and buy it next turn.
Yeah, because sometimes the Quillbore minions will give you a lot of blood gems like during the combat, and so you want to, or at the end of turn, you want to get what you have in your hand out of your hand.
Yeah.
Before you end your turn.
Okay.
There might be other interactions that I'm not aware of, though.
I don't know if there's anything that doubles size of anything in the tavern. That might be relevant for that too. Fix a bug where pirates generated by a Golden Fleet Admiral Tethys did not automatically triple, but instead tripled once an action was taken. So I can see how that would be confusing. Fixed a bug where Octosari Rap God would spawn an extra tentacle when goldenized by the Golden Hammer. Fix a bug where some strikes did not appear correctly from the opponent's perspective, because if you're spending all that time grinding XP for strikes, you better make sure that the opponent gets to see it. We had updated the treasure offerings in duels to better align with hero power and classes, like not offering some weapon-based treasures to non-weapon classes. That's a small quality of life improvement there. Arena fixed a bug where False Disciple only offered legendary cards from a few sets. I'm not sure if that's related to what was in the pool for Arena or just, in general, but that's fine. And we have some collection cosmetic bug fixes. Fixed a bug that prevented players from crafting gold versions of certain Demon Hunter cards. Fixed a visual bug with Diamond Murzon Thief of Time's animation. Fixed a bug where some of Fellblaze Illidan's emotes showed the wrong text. Fixed a bug where the Titansborg Constellation effect would occasionally obstruct your hand on mobile. And they raised the minimum spec requirements for Android devices to Android 9. So Android players on ancient devices, be forewarned. So that's the bugs that they fixed. And then, of course, a new patch comes with the bugs that get introduced. And this has been another one that's been kind of involved a number of bugs relating to the anomalies to some extent. So they've had a bunch that they've been tracking. First of all, they've received reports of antivirus software flagging audio plugin Fluxer.dll as malware. This is a false positive that's been submitted to the antivirus vendors for clearance. The file can be safely restored without risk, and we're working to clear flags as quickly as possible. So if you get that flag in your antivirus software on your PC, know that it's fine, but just be aware of that. Team is investigating an issue with Battlegrounds games unexpectedly hanging. Maiev has ironically gone dormant and is temporarily unavailable as a hero until a fix is found. Some Hearthstone anomalies have unintuitive interactions with start of game cards such as Prince Renathal. A fix is coming in a future hotfix patch. So I believe what this is that there is the anomaly that gives you +5 health that goes off, and then Renathal sets your health to 35. So you would think that when you're playing Renathal, you would start with 40, but you're actually starting with 35 because Renathal just sets you to 35 after the anomaly goes off. So
This might
again,
also fix some of the Shadow Priest Benedictus issues.
yeah,
Since
that might
I-
also,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe, although I think in the case you were saying of your hero power gets replaced and then by Benedictus, and then you get the upgrade, I think the upgrade would swap it to Restore 4.
It would,
not
yeah.
upgrade it to...
yeah.
So that
there's
would
no,
be...
yeah, there's
that's,
no,
that's one where I
yeah.
hope they leave it alone.
yeah,
You know, I mean, what I would really love is if it updates like Shadow Form and now I have deal 3, but I don't expect that.
yeah. And Shadow Form doesn't even work that way anymore. So it's like the card Shadow Form hasn't worked that way since like the Priest rework a few years ago. So they took that out when they did the rework. Player records may not be available in Duels games. Some Duels hero powers are visually incorrect in hero selection. The hero powers should work correctly in game. They're aware that some games versus official bot opponents may not have anomalies, so that fix is coming. The description of the Clockwork Strike in Battlegrounds incorrectly notes that the strike can be earned by completing the Battleground Season 4 pass. The strike is only available as a direct purchase and can be obtained now. The description will be updated in a future patch. This one has been resolved, that players were able to select the same option multiple times from Bound Souls created by Soul Eater Scythe. So that's one I'm glad they fixed quickly, because that's kind of broken.
I saw that. It was not fun.
So the team is investigating issues with the Duels collection appearing empty during deck building on mobile clients only as a workaround after selecting your hero. Restarting the client will allow you to build a deck. Desktop clients are unaffected at this time. And finale cards glow at incorrect times when costs are adjusted by outside factors such as anomalies. So what happens if you get your first spell each turn costs 1 less anomaly, and you have an anomaly that costs 4, but you have 5, or you have say a Bridge Riff in your hand, which costs 5, but it's been discounted to 4, but you have 5 mana crystals, it will be glowing yellow, even though the finale will not go off. So be aware when you're looking at it, don't just trust the color when anomalies are there. Hardcore Cultists and Consort Promo Drake cannot trigger their finale effects when costs are adjusted by outside factors, such as anomalies, so that sounds like a bigger issue than the Rifts. Some weapons that adjust their own stats, such as Spirit Claws, were not fixed in the most recent bug fix. A further bug fix is planned for an upcoming hotfix. So Edel, don't dust off that Spirit Claws deck just yet, I guess. And the team is aware that some Battlegrounds players can't see the game's anomaly during the tier select screen. This appears to affect iOS devices. They're investigating the cause and working on a solution. So be aware of all those things. Nothing game breaking, but there are some weird things that you just take the time to look at them as you're going through, and just be aware of those in case they come up. But the team is working on a lot of things, and we'll probably get a pretty good client patch when they announce the new expansion in a couple weeks. So we got a number of new portraits in the shop as well. Cthulhu we've talked about. Jaraxastein, which is the Warlock Halloween portrait, is also purchasable with gold, if that's something that you're interested in. Of course, you can buy the mini set and all those things that go along with it as well. We are getting an Investigator Xyrella in an upcoming update, not this week, but hopefully next, which looks amazing, and I will buy immediately. But that's not available yet. So a couple other miscellaneous quick hits there. The Hearthstone wiki. So if you Google like any Hearthstone card ever, you will generally get a link to the Hearthstone wiki, is moving from hearthstone.fandom.com to hearthstone.wiki.gg. So the team that maintains that has picked up and moved. And so there's going to be a couple things. They're saying like the ads that are there are a little bit more friendly. The UI is a little bit better for desktop and mobile view. Wiki.gg only hosts about games, as opposed to Fandom, which hosts about everything. So just be aware that the team that's maintaining that has moved. And what happens when you try to do this, because the team at Fandom is still operating the old wiki, that is still going to show up in your Google searches. So if you are searching and you're inclined to go to the Hearthstone wiki to look something up, make sure to go to the wiki.gg search result rather than the Fandom one, because until they get enough people clicking on those, then Google's not going to pick it up, and it's going to keep serving up the old links. There's a browser extension that they're recommending. That makes the IT professional in me very skeptical. I don't feel like this is... I mean, I'm the kind of person that is very careful about the kinds of things that I install for, there's a risk reward that's involved. And this seems like high risk, low reward, effectively. Like, I'm sure it's fine, but also maybe it's not, and who knows what it's doing. So if you really need it, then go ahead and install that extension, but just look at the search results before you click, and you should be fine. Some slightly sadder news. I mean, it's not sad necessarily, but it's sad for us, I guess, is Matt London, who is the modes lead, so in charge of Wild and now Twist and Duels and Arena, has taken on a new role. He is still at Blizzard, but he is moving over to being a lead designer on the unannounced survival game at Blizzard. So still there, and obviously wish him all the best, and obviously wish that he was still working on Hearthstone, because he's been a great part of the dev team and great to interact with. But hope that he gets everything he's looking for out of that new position, and I'm sure that it will be in good hands with him leading up the narrative design, which I presume is what he's doing over there.
Yeah, bittersweet. He's been a great writer. He did all the Mercenaries stuff, as far as I know, and has contributed to it, a ton of other things in terms of Hearthstone narrative. Awesome that he's got this opportunity. I know a lot of times people like to move around, try different things, and presumably he knows what the unannounced survival game is. So
yeah,
I think
I would like to think so if he's working on it.
Yeah. I'm excited about when we hear more about that game, and more excited to know that Matt London's going to be a writer on it.
Yeah.
It's a recommendation to the game, and I like survival games often, so I'm definitely going to be curious when they eventually make it an announced survival game.
Yeah. And if you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, they just released a new random epic card. So it's not the random legendary that we used to get, but cards are cards. So go click on the thing at gaming.amazon.com and get your free epic. So that's news. So now that we've talked about all of that, I think we should probably talk about what the heck you should be doing in ladder with all the anomalies and all the new cards and all the tentacles.
We do have a short tournaments.
Oh, do we?
We do.
Well,
a quick announcement. We can make it part of news.
Oh yeah. Yeah, why don't we just make that's a good point. Sure. Yeah, why don't we just make that part of news? Go ahead.
I'll mark this down. Okay.
Yeah.
But before we dive into our explanations and sort of meta feels discussion, we do want to let everyone know that we've got the Listener Series coming up starting Monday the 25th. Coinomaly concede, Miguel says, but here. There are going to be anomalies, but otherwise it's bring 3, ban 1, best of 3 conquests at regular competitive 1 match per week at a time that you schedule with your opponent. Deck lists are due by Friday mornings, and the match results by Monday mornings. There will be 3 to 5 weeks of competition with rankings, but no elimination, followed by top 8 single elim playoffs. We are going to allow people to, because there is that 25% chance of anomalies showing up in friendlies, if you and your opponent are like, hey, for sure, we don't want to play with these, you're welcome to just agree with each other before you get started that, hey, we're just going to restart if we roll an anomaly, and not have to deal with that. Of course, if one of you has Cho'Gall, then that's just how it is, right? I suppose you could agree that if you get the double anomaly to redo it, but I'm guessing someone that has Cho'Gall in their deck is not going to agree to that, and it has to be a mutual thing. So, yeah. So to sign up, click the link either in the show notes or we'll have it in the Discord as well if you haven't already. Probably will be a short window by the time people are hearing this. So
if it's, if you're listening to this at the beginning of next week on your commute, we do sometimes have late signups. So if, especially if it's still that first week, we will try to get you in. So yeah, don't worry too much if by the time you've gotten to this, it is Tuesday on your commute. Hopefully we can get some late signups in. We've done that before.
So look forward to that.
So I guess we can talk about what you might want to bring to the Coin Concede Listener Series, or ladder, or whatever else that you're going to be playing.
All right, so we have a list here, somewhat informally, to talk about of a couple of new decks that have popped up that we wanted to give some thoughts on, as well as some notably updated decks. Some of this we've talked about some already in Life on Ladder. Might have other things to add, and some of them we did not have a chance to dive into as much. I think we actually touched on most of these, but not necessarily in a more formal way. So I was thinking we could start with what are sort of new archetypes that we've seen pop up. And I think the one that definitely stands out is Tentacle Rogue. And we've mentioned this some. Definitely some people just want to watch the world burn type of deck. What have you been seeing in terms of the specific builds that people have been doing? And also, I suppose we should just give a kind of thesis statement of this deck. I think there's been sort of more than one way to build it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way that I've seen it played against me, at least, is it's basically Miracle Rogue, but with a lower curve. So instead of playing things like the 6 mana rushy guy that gets cheaper when you play minions, you're just playing a whole bunch of tendrils, chaotic tendrils, or things that generate chaotic tendrils, or things that bounce chaotic tendrils, so that you can play a whole bunch of tendrils, get the value out of the spells, whether they do anything or not. It maybe doesn't matter, but the whole idea is to get a big turn of bouncing stuff around, such that you get a really early, really big minion out of the location, and you hope that sticks. And if not, then maybe some of the additional value from the tendrils will get you there. And a lot of the stuff is also cheap spells, so then you make Yogg cheaper, and then Yogg can either get you more tendrils, or it can steal your opponent's minion that they're trying to put as a taunt in the way, or whatever it happens to be. And you can also bounce the Yogg and do more Yogg things, and usual rogue shenanigans.
Yeah, I think the wave of people playing this began with Kibler, and he was running some suboptimal things, like the 5-drop that Battlecry gives you 2 tentacles, and he has Sire. This list we've got is more Miracle-y and doesn't have Sire. I think Sire is probably unnecessary most of the time, but I do like the sort of fun nod to From the Other Side. Majority of people playing this at higher levels, I think, are not doing the fill their hand with tentacles unless they absolutely need to. It's more just utilizing the chaotic tendrils that you get from the 2 that are in your deck and the ones off of Tentacle Grip as cheap minions that sometimes give you an extra beneficial effect, but mostly power your Sinstone Graveyard. And I think you see some pretty big Sinstone graveyard turns with these because of all those cheap effects, and every once in a while they get a really strong cheap spell off of those tendrils. A decent amount card draw, I feel like. And, sometimes they hit Curse of Flesh and it's a super low roll, but most of the time I feel like the spells have either been irrelevant or decent. I think it's rare that you get one that's really bad for you.
Most of the time when I saw that they were clearing things or drawing or sort of fizzling out and not doing anything that was that much impactful, but because you're doing this in a miracle shell, you don't actually, that's a bonus if the spell does something good for you. It's not your game plan. I do think there are some lists which have a little bit of the, like step 1, tentacles, step 2, question mark, step 3, profit game plan, but that's not the perhaps more consistently competitive way to play the deck. I was also seeing this, I need to make this list that you have up here a little bit better so I can see it. Seeing this with concoctions on some opponents who were trying to play kind of a hybrid there. I don't know if that was necessarily the most
that's the list that we have that Donkey's helpfully called Coctical Rogue, which is again getting into Blizzlet territory, but you run Potion Belt.
I had the wrong tab open, sorry.
So you run Potion Belt, you run Alchemist, you run Professor Putricide. You're running Concoctor, so you're running the greatest hits of the concoctions in a Miracle Rogue. You're running Queen Ajara because why not, right? Then you can just get a free Colossal, and that also is more spells that can discount your Yogg. So that's and then other than that, everything below Graveyard costs 2 or less, except for Ajara, Krakatoa, and Yogg, which are all just so much value that you would have to run them in a deck like this anyway.
Yeah, I mean it is Miracle Rogue. Make no buts about it. Everything hella cheap, and Yogg, even though it shows up as 15, right? You're generally playing that for free. I think the biggest notable change here, apart from adding Tendril and Tentacle Grip, is that Breakdance is good. And Breakdance is good because Yogg-Saron is free, and you get a 7/5. So you play Yogg, you Mind Control or Mass Hysteria your opponent's board, and then you Breakdance the Yogg, and you get a 7/5 rush for your trouble of taking your opponent's things. And I think the higher ends of play, that's mostly what you're doing with the Yogg, is one of those two effects, because it's either a one-sided board clear or steal your opponent's best minion, and Miracle Rogue is all about tempo. So it's just really, really powerful swing to be able to go Yogg, Breakdance, be able to do it again, and have this 7/5 rusher. It mounts some pressure very, very quickly, and that added ability for a rogue like this to not lose to opposing board strategies because they can just clear it is really potent.
Yeah. I mean, Yogg's just a better removal than anything Rogue had access to, right? Rogue didn't deal with wide boards particularly well, and it was relying on the concoction, the Destroy a Random Minion concoction, to deal with a minion in the way. And this is targeted single target removal and a board clear, and you can do it multiple times if you want to. So
yeah, this is definitely a very consistent, except for the Chaotic Tendrils, which is in the name, a very consistent Yogg when you need it to be, and it has both kinds of removal. And you still have the concoctions with the kill a random enemy minion if you need to. You still have that whole package.
Yeah, we'll see how the meta shapes up, but I wouldn't be surprised if we are doing explanations on this sometime in the near future, because it is sort of I feel like most changed of recent decks, and I don't know how much Miracle Druid we're going to be playing, but I suppose that could also be one. Just some of the other things have been tapped a little more already, like in Rage Warrior, like Shadow Priest, like Arcane Hunter. So if we're looking for, you know, a newer, you know, pretty different deck, I feel like it's going to be one of those two, either the Tentacle Rogue or the Miracle Druid, because Yogg is so powerful. And the answer is not to play Chaotic Tendrils. That's it's not
That
what
is
it's
the
for.
Kibler answer.
Nope.
But I do think the Denathrius is very clever, though.
Yeah.
I had not run into that. I had just run into the concoction. All right, but Wicked, you had put down Miracle Druid.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, so the thing about Miracle Druid is that Gadget Sand Auctioneer is somehow still in standard. And this is a tale as old as time, with Druid playing Gadget Sand Auctioneer and a bunch of free spells and drawing through its deck. And I guess so ultimately you're running all the cheap spells, right? Like you're running Aquatic Form, Forbidden Fruit, which is the new spell that spends all your mana, gives you armor, either that much attack or that twice that much armor. You have Innervate, you have Embrace of Nature, Funnel Cake, which is going to get you more mana, Rake, because it's a really, really good card. This version's running one copy of Audio Amplifier, which, I mean, I guess that just gives you a little bit more attack with the Forbidden Fruit, and also just gives you a little bit more room with hand space, which sometimes when you're dealing with Auctioneer is a thing you have to worry about. You're running both Eclipses, Lifebinder's Gift to make your spells cheaper, Frost Lotus Seedling for more draw and some armor, and then your top end, at least in this version, and your top end starts at 3, by the way, aside from Nourish, your minions are Photographer Fizzle, Zola the Gorgon, Ignis, 2 Gadget Sand Auctioneers, and Yogg. So you're basically getting as many copies of either Yogg or Ignis as you can. And if you can get Ignis to give you a Wind Fury weapon, then Wind Fury weapon, which with plus Forbidden Fruit, equals dead. I found that out the hard way tonight.
Yep.
So I don't. There may be other, like, I've seen it once. This is the first time I actually saw it. This is something that popped up on Twitter this morning, and the discussion in our Discord this morning was basically, this has to be bait, right? Because it looks like it's bait. Except that I've seen enough high-level players also posting, not necessarily the same 30, but lists that are similar to this, that it's probably a real thing. I also saw someone tweeting, "Hey, Wild players, congratulations! Standard's finally going to get Gadget Sand Auctioneer nerfed. You're welcome." So,
And there is, I definitely will not be thrilled if this becomes super powerful and common. I do think there is something to be said for every once in a while having a real Miracle Auctioneer type of deck that's not just Miracle Rogue. But it definitely sounds like you can get... I haven't actually run into this version of the deck. I've run into ones that were doing a somewhat more less combo, more tempo, just do the... use Forbidden Fruit as something that they're also combining with the hero power buffs. The one that I saw was just buffing the attack. They weren't even worrying about the armor. And you get that on a Wind Fury weapon. It's also effective, but this does seem more likely to be the meta breaker. So I am glad this exists for people who want to play it, and probably if it becomes super common, it'll get touched.
Yeah, I mean, this is all a symptom of Yogg-Saron being really good, of it being a neutral Titan that gives these decks access to removal, right? A board clear. And being able to be a spell-heavy, like, turbo draw deck that wants to do its own thing and then has a free one-sided board clear is just, like, incredibly potent, because now it's not like you need your pop-off draw turn to find you stuff that keeps you barely alive. You just need it to find you Yogg, and then you close out that big draw turn with, and then I Yogg and clear your board. And so there's not a whole lot to be done about that. Like, I don't know how you change Yogg. Maybe the mass hysteria has to include everyone's minions, but it just seems like a few of these things, what is pushing them over the edge is having access to Yogg as a potent defensive tool. And I mean, to some extent, Ignis giving Wind Fury seems like it may be a long-term problem, both because it's used here in Druid and in Odin Warrior. You know, they get a 1-mana Wind Fury weapon and then just gain hella armor and murder you. And so anyone that can take advantage, like giving their own hero attack, just has these crazy burst potentials with Ignis. I don't know if they maybe need to remove Wind Fury from that pool, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd
that
probably kill the
really
card
touches
if you
the
do that.
power. That really touches the power of Ignis, even for classes that don't have attack on the weapon. Just sometimes getting the 8 armor twice in the same turn, or getting to the death rattle, but less often. But I wouldn't be surprised if that gets touched eventually, because it just has so much potential for abuse, and because I think they might be more hesitant to touch Yogg,
Yeah.
especially right away. You know, with it being such a popular card and kind of the marquee card. So, I mean, this is kind of taking a little bit of what like Moonbeam Druid was trying to do, but Yogg sort of single-handedly helps shore up what Moonbeam Druid could not do, which is survive if you play things against it. Apparently what they've been doing in the Moonbeam Druid thread in the Discord is adding Prison Breaker, because that will clear the opponent's board.
Can you
It's
remind
one
us
of the
what
new
Prison
mini-set
Breaker
cards.
is?
It's the 4-mana, 4/4 or 3/3 that if you've played 5 spells this game, deal 3 damage to all opponents.
Yes, 4-mana 4/4. If you've cast 5 or more spells this game, deal 3 damage to all enemies. So that's easily met in Moonbeam Druid, and so at least you have a clear.
Yeah.
As one person put it, it's now gone to 30/70 if they play minions against you,
Yay! Yeah.
which is an improvement over like 1090. So
Yeah. I mean, you could also, if you wanted to change Ignis, you could also just take Wind Fury off the 1-mana weapon, right? Because that's often the kind of thing that you do is you just play Ignis for a 1-mana, especially in Warrior, right? Like you'll play Ignis for a 1-mana weapon, you'll get the Wind Fury, and then you'll play like you'll play a shield block and a heavy plate or something like that. And that's probably similar in the Miracle Druid. I will point out, I just went to HS Replay to look up the Miracle Druid stats. I see Diamond through Legend. I see 3 lists that account for about 3,500 games, and the best of those lists has a 49.9% win rate. So it may not be panic time yet. Now, when you go to top 1,000 Legend, then there's a list that has 220 games that has 56.4%. That might just be one person or like 5 people. I guess you have to have like at least 5 people. So it might be 5 people who are really good at it. This could be another Naga Mage situation where like it's good in very, very specific hands and not necessarily a generically good deck. It could also need some time to get refined and people to learn how to play it. I'm not ready to raise the alarm bells on Miracle Druid just yet after having lost to it once. I will raise the alarm bells about having to look at Cthulhu's stupid eye the whole time. But, you know, other than that, that would be the main reason that I wouldn't want this to get good, is that I'd have to face more Druids playing Cthulhu. But, you know, that's a different story.
Yeah,
apparently Corbett said that this is the hardest deck in Standard. So, you know, that is one person, but, you know, he's a good player.
And Naga Mage is currently in Standard, by the way.
And Naga Mage is currently in Standard, so I don't know if this is harder than Naga Mage, but the fact that even that is out there definitely says something about the deck.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll tank my rank with it a bit before going back to Enraged Warrior, but I mean, I don't know. If they adjust Naga Mage because it's older and upsetting people again, then maybe this sort of takes its place. There must always be a Garrote Rogue equivalent, but yeah, there's
Must
been
there?
some other experimentations though. One that excites me is Pain Warlock, because I really dig this, 3-mana spell that fatigues you both a couple. I did try out basically just I put it in Imp Lock, and it's great having access to that extra burst. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've been seeing both like people experimenting both with just put it in Imp Lock. You already have that fatigue package, and you already have a lot of pressure, and you just add more to it. Then, of course, there's also people experimenting with it as like an OTK combo, like we had talked about the potential of that last week. And I even say people putting it in the Curse Shell because it's just more damage
Yeah, I can see it.
that you're doing to them over the top, and the Curse Shell has some survivability. You don't necessarily need to add a lot of support for it in that shell because you already have the curses to add damage. So that's something that I know, I hope keeps being experimented with because I think it's really cool. The Imp Lock, like, stats and HSR right now are not amazing, but I think it's also it's not refined
It's early days.
fully.
Yeah.
If you really want to go for the 10 mana OTK, you get Encroaching Insanity in Lady Darkvein. You have a Void Virtuoso up, and then you kill with like Mortal Coil. Void. It looks like you can even use Devourer of Souls and Defile and just really get it off. Apparently, you can get 55 damage this way. If you
That's a
haven't
lot.
gotten any other fatigue out ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
If you've already gotten them to take fatigue, it can go quite a bit higher. So that seems... I would be surprised if the full OTK is actually the way to go. I feel like putting it in a more incremental damage like the Imp Lock, that would be my guess as to what's more likely to be effective. But we also do have a lot of Odin warriors running around who might need more damage. So, and I just think that that's really cool that you can do that.
I could see a world where you just do all kinds of control tools and then run that as like the OTK turn, but then you still run the one that does fatigue you plus damage to all opposing. So again, something like a warrior, if you have that crescendo for post the combo turn, you just like play the harp and use it.
Yeah, so you have some backup in case this doesn't do it. Yeah, and then this definitely is inevitability. And there's more than one way to kill off the Dark Veins. So except for Dark Vein and Encroaching Insanity itself, you have some redundancy in how you get the combo off, which is always, you can use the Defile to get your combo, or you can use Defile to not die. And then you still have other ways to get your combo off, which is always good for a combo deck to not have so many dead combo pieces in hand or be sitting there looking for the one thing that they need.
It does seem like we have firmly stepped away from the board-based meta and into more of a combo meta
You think?
these days. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I was just looking at the other things that we had here. There was a couple other, I'd put some updated decks, but I think we mostly touched on those. But just in terms of if there's any other new decks we want to talk about, Wicked, I see that you wrote Jombre Yogg Priest. Yeah, I saw this on Twitter. I noted that he did not say this deck is amazing. He said
he
I
played it.
this deck.
So it's basically all of the draw cards in Priest plus Fizzle and Yogg. So like Crimson Clergy, Handmaiden, Priestess Valish is making a comeback. And then you have Creation Protocol, you have Power Chord Synchronize, Love Everlasting, you got Switcheroo to draw the minions. And then you're just fizzling back in. I guess you're creation protocoling the fizzle so that every time you play a fizzle, you put a fizzle and a Yogg into the snapshot so that you can effectively go infinite with Yogg. And step 2 question mark, step 3 profit. You know, like that's been
Maybe
that's
we
kind
put
of
Denathrius. Oh, sorry.
I think he was talking about putting Ignis in, which would make sense, right? Because if you're playing Creation Protocol, then just you could put a bunch of Ignises in, and then you just get a bunch of weapons, and you can get some inevitability that way. I think you probably need something a little bit more than just Yogg, especially because you're not going to have room in your hand for the Chaotic Tendrils. So, like, that's not even really a win con for you, and Yogg by himself is just a 7/5. But it's something you can do? Question mark? You're also probably not John Bray, so your mileage may vary. And he didn't post a record with it. He just said he played it. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the strength of Yogg is not in the tendrils, which are questionable inevitability, but if you just have a repeatable board clear, so you don't have to worry about that stuff as a combo deck, and then you have something else that kills them. So, Ignis would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, having some sort of an actual win con would probably make the deck a little bit better, I would think.
This has the older, when Naga Mage has not been good, just keep doing things until you die problem would be my guess. If you don't put a win con in there. But one more that I wanted to briefly mention, I saw that Wuling had posted a Egg Hunter with the new Twisted Frostwing, which is the Rush Death Rattle, summon a Chimera with stats equal to this minion's attack, and Yelling Yodeler, Observer of Mists, the new Bestial Madness, give +1 attack to all minions in your hand, deck, and battlefield, Rancher, and a bunch of eggs. And I was definitely having a conversation in the Discord with World 8 about, do we need all of the eggs, and are there other things we can do with it? They have Magatha there for draw, because you only have 4 spells, the Bestial Madness and Awakening Tremors, and you have 1 Trinket Tracker to draw that. It definitely still, I think, draws probably the hardest thing for it, but Wuling definitely can sometimes post some promising aggressive lists, knows how to build them. So I want to give this one a try. I'm curious about it because I've kind of wanted that Death Rattle Hunter archetype to work, and it's just never quite been a thing. So I don't know if this is a thing, but I think it's worth a look at least.
You also get some draw off of Agrimar. You can give the weapon draw with Agrimar.
That's true. I've actually been doing that a lot in Arcane Hunter. When I'm in slower matchups, I just need cards in my deck, and then the new spell gives you a bunch more damage, so you just need the cards in your hand, and you don't need the +2 on the weapon as much, unless you've already drawn a bunch.
Yeah, I've been wanting a way to utilize Bestial Madness, because really cool effect, and the new Rusher is also quite powerful. So definitely gonna have to take a look at this one. Wuling is, I think, also known for his Triple Unholy lists, so I trust him to come up with something for Hunter in that vein, taking advantage of Bestial Madness.
Something sufficiently smorky, I would expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, definitely. If you are the smork type, and you do not follow him on Twitter, then if you are on Twitter, which I wouldn't blame you for not being on Twitter these days, it's someone worth following.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinandseed.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CoinConcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Enraged Chicken, and Grizzly Bear. Would like to also shout out Mr. Bungalow, Oatleafs, and Lulu Mark 1 ×5 for her for their subs during the show, and Fair Teasy for 203 bits. Thank you so much for the support. Coin Concedes.
Well, I'm going to coin concede to Maureen because, first of all, it was her birthday this past weekend. And so that's one reason. But also, I've been, I've been struggling with work the last couple weeks and energy and stuff like that. And we had the high school back to school open house Wednesday night. And I also discovered that I had a all-day meeting, no lunch break situation on Wednesday. I guess I shouldn't say no lunch break. They give like 20. They gave us like 20 minutes, which is, it's the kind of thing where when you get into corporate meetings like this, where they feel like if they bring food for you, then you don't actually need to take a break for lunch, which is not how my brain works. So I knew that I was going to kind of be a mess by the time I got home, and Maureen recognized that and said, do not go to the open house. So, and I did not have a shutdown or a meltdown last night, which I appreciated. So she's pretty great, and I'm pretty lucky to have been married to her for 21 years and change. So,
Wow.
So coin concede to her.
You guys.
I will give a coin concede to the Magic the Gathering Club at my school. I am the faculty advisor for it.
You don't say.
Of course, I'm sitting there going like, well, like using Hearthstone terminology by accident when I'm supposed to be, this. And also, sitting there when one of my students is complaining about how much text there is on the cards. I'm like, have you heard of this game? One of my coworkers, who's a former Hearthstone player, is one of the few who I've met who did not have any Magic the Gathering background. And so he was sitting down going, so does this game differ from Hearthstone? And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, we've got lands, and for another thing, like you don't choose what your creatures are attacking. So I almost said minions. And he was just like, I was blowing his mind with that. But they've really been working hard on learning more about how to play. We actually finished all the games during lunch, and the new player who I was teaching beat me. He was very pleased. They've not only been working hard at their studies in my classes, but also I'm seeing them grow their strategic wings in Magic the Gathering. So I am proud of them as a geek as well.
And then I'm going to coin concede to Enzo and World 8, who have been doing the traditional Enrage Warrior brewing over in the Coin Concede Discord under our decklist threads. And I have just kind of been lurking, but of course I had my initial testings of various lists and then was like, all right, let's get something that actually works. And, I checked out what they've been brewing. And yeah. Gosh, when I initially built, I overlooked Acolyte of Pain, and it's just so great right now.
All right, well, so that's going to do it for this week. So until next time, keep calm and roll a good anomaly. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Recording.
Recording.
Okie doke.
Thank you for trying to wrap things up a little faster.
No, I'm
yeah.
I think like in Rachel's ideal world, I would be done by 9:15, but that's like hard to swing.
Has she met us? No, she hasn't, but yeah.
Yeah. I do think if we could somehow trim the fat on bugs,
Yeah,
that's
we
the
can.
section
Yeah, we
that
can
I
start.
most feel like sometimes is
Yeah.
like, do we really have to say every single one of
Yeah.
these things? But then I know it's extra work beforehand to say, okay, so which ones do we actually mention?
We can
I
figure
don't
that
know.
out. We should probably
But-
send our folks over and then
Yeah.
because we should figure out who
Yeah.
we're gonna raid. Maybe we just raid No Hands because he's probably playing something interesting. So why don't we send folks over to No Hands? If I can type in the text box, which is a skill that I should have learned by now being an IT professional. But, you know, just because I work with computers for a living does not mean that I can make computers work for a living. So there you go. So thanks everybody. We're gonna
I've
go send you
gotten
over
into-
No Hands. And have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Everybody. Yeah, I've definitely become the people have started coming up to me